All right. Um, there is nothing like a year of online meetings to make many of us think about lighting. Am I too much in the dark? Will that make me appear to be scary? Is there a candle flickering behind me? Am I drawing too much attention to myself or revealing too many flaws with the light? Like, oh my God, I forgot to shave. What does the lighting around me say about me? Well, these same principles apply to lighting public spaces at night, particularly urban spaces. Will I be safe? Does the architectural lighting complete or compete with a building's design? What is that work of light trying to convey to me? Will I share this joyous space with others? Welcome to Enlightened, planning and designing public spaces for the night. This month's Zoominar brought to you by the all-volunteer and nonprofit organization 24 Hour Dallas. We are also streaming this program through our 24 Hour Dallas Facebook page if you're interested. Today, we're going to meet and learn from two experts in the fields of art, urbanism, technology, and nighttime placemaking, particularly with light. The mission of 24 Hour Dallas is to advocate for a nighttime Dallas that is safer, more inclusive, more economically and culturally vibrant for residents, businesses, and visitors. Our volunteers are focused on the city of Dallas at night in the areas of economics, culture, racial equity, safety, and placemaking. You can learn more about us at 24hourdallas.org. My name is Randall White. I serve as president of the board of directors, and I am also the organization's founder. Our co-sponsor for this Zoominar is Architectural Lighting Alliance here in North Texas. ALA's high-profile lighting projects in Dallas include Clyde Warren Park and my favorite, the exquisitely lit Santiago Calatrava designed Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. We thank Architectural Lighting Alliance for their support. You can learn more about them at alatx.com. Our guest host today is a fellow volunteer and chair of our 24 Hour Dallas placemaking team, Bryan Toney, the man with two names, two first names. He is by day a public affairs and public policy expert, currently working in the realm of political consulting. And before I turn this webinar over to Bryan for full introductions, I would like to welcome Lenny and Joshua. Thank you so much for your contributions to our arts and cultural scenes in many places around the world, as well as for creating great spaces at night with light. Bryan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Randall, and thank you 24 Hour Dallas for organizing another great webinar. We continue to do these monthly to promote different ideas and consciousness about how we can make our cities more 24 hours and more safe and welcoming. And none of that would be possible without light, and having nighttime places is what we need more of, and to feel safe and welcome in those. So thank you for our audience members who are turning in today. We have a pretty diverse crowd from what I understand. We have people who are city planners, we've got academics, urbanists, landscape designers. This has a wide range and appeal even to lay people myself who may not necessarily have that natural eye, but do want to be able to know what to look for more in the future and make Dallas and our cities more improved at all hours of day and night. So our two people today have done work, our guests around the world and North America. Lenny Schweiniger is a hybrid urbanist, designer, and artist specializing in night and light, and she calls New York City and London home. And similarly, we have someone else who wears a lot of different hats, Joshua King, artist, curator, and the executive director and co-founder of Dallas Aurora, which focuses on art, technology, and community. So thank you both for being here from me as well. And then for those of you who are watching at home on Zoom, please feel free to utilize the chat to submit some questions. We'll try and get to as many as we can with the time that's allowed. So with that all said, to begin with Lenny and Joshua, I'd like each of you to take some time. We'll start with Lenny first in honor of Women's History Month and everything that she does, to present more about your own journeys and night seeing, and then for Joshua, Aurora, and to kind of explain to us all what lighting is, what its purpose is, and demonstrate what nighttime places are and why lighting and illumination is so important. Lenny?
Hi, everybody. I see there's 43 participants. That's really exciting, and a lot of late nighters out there in the UK and European zone. I'm really happy to be here, and you know what? I've got some images to show you, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. All right, let me do that thing. Hold on, I've got a little spinning ball of slowness. All right, here we go. Well, I'm a nighttime designer. Most people know me as an urban lighting designer, but I changed my profession when I realized that I cared more about the night as a place and how we might broaden our view of this place beyond lighting. So I'm going to talk about luminous legibility today and start by saying that night walking is literature. From Dickens' All Night London essay to Virginia Woolf's Midnight Search for a Pencil, or Edgar Allan Poe's expression about walking arm in arm amid the lights, the wild lights of the city, and also contemplating on that solitary walk that darkness can afford. Now, if you would, close your eyes and picture your favorite city. It's night. Now turn off the pedestrian lights, the street lights, that public lighting. All right, now turn off the moon. It's pitch dark. Okay, let's add those street lights back. Let's add some pedestrian lights, which often in America we don't even have. Let's get some legibility onto the sidewalk. And then let's add some light on a historic facade or two. And in the distance, there's an aurora public art, or a steeple that's illuminated, or a statue. This is luminous legibility. And this is the value of night and light. Okay, come back to me. Let's open our eyes. What I want to talk to you about today is the everyday of the streets. But to do that creatively with community engagement. Can we build communities with light? Can we strengthen social connections, extend walkability after dark? In other words, improve safety, public health, and economic vitality? How would we do that? Let's start by understanding the minutes and the hours throughout the night. It's not all the same. During the night, there are different phases. We call that shades of night. There's dusk. There's the after work activity, shopping perhaps for groceries, going out for a cocktail. Soon, it will not be the pandemic. After dark recreation, maybe that's basketball. Maybe that's a club. And then the night shift comes on, traversing the city. The after hours clubbers transfer by the night shift workers, the early risers and dawn. We like to measure the night and see who's out and who we're designing for. Now, I know most of you are interested in retail and economics, the nighttime economy. I believe that the street wall is the corridor we're walking on, and I want to increase walkability. So let's practice better windows, merchandising, creating a window of light either side as we walk. Let's find out what color is this place. If we pixelize the images of the storefronts, we will see the gaps and we'll see what we can enhance with a window shopping merchandising program, perhaps in our central districts, our downtown districts. Night seeing itself is a program. It's something I invented 10 years ago, in fact, where we walk with people who are improving their districts at night to elevate our language to understand what our perceptions are. Is that a glimmer? Or is that a glisten? Is that a twinkle? Or is that a sparkle? Let's name the phenomena of light so we can begin to say how we would like the night to feel, how we would like to perceive the night. And we do this by walking together and developing new vocabularies. We can create overlays for master plans, existing city master plans. The night is a place. It's completely different sensibility. We respond to it differently. There are different businesses. There are different fears. Poetry. Which will it be? Let's add to those dry daytime master plans the overlay of a light strategy. I know that you're all interested in the GNRP, the Global Nighttime Recovery Plan, which myself and a number of people, including Alistair Turnham, who I'm sure is on this webinar. Chapter 3 underscores the importance of innovating at night. So let's get a little more exact. We want to transform after dark shopping, transiting to cultural events, outdoor gatherings, the night shift, moving across the city to get to our jobs, the night clubbers, and the early risers, as I mentioned, in shades of night. Let's define who the population is that we are serving as nighttime designers. We like to create pilots, try things out. Let's try that creative idea out. This is Cartagena with localized lanterns, from a neutral lantern to a highly identified lantern that would transform a neighborhood at night and increase the investment and the love for the city at night. Please close your eyes again. And now, can you picture breadcrumbs of welcoming light on the sidewalk? Look, it's a luminous bench. It's a respite for those of us trudging along with our groceries and our children after work. It's midweek late night closing. The shops close at 9. Hey, the library's open. It's midnight. And around the corner is a night market. And I see posters for a Saturday night concert in the park, complete with audio headphones to coexist with the residential neighborhood. Let's design our after dark neighborhood together. Please open your eyes. That is my story.
Thank you, Lenny. That was super helpful to help us really visualize and see with our own eyes, the back of our eyelids, what the really dark could look like. But if we activate that in our minds and with that light, how much more is possible. Joshua, you've been doing this work in Dallas for 10 years now. Would love to hear more about Aurora and how y'all are able to activate and illuminate and create movement in our nighttime spaces, and would love to hear more.
Lenny, that was fantastic. I love that night seeing and Aurora both started about 10 years ago. I didn't know that. You know, it's like we both started this journey at the same time, you know. And it is a journey. And I think that's what's one fantastic part about the nighttime is, right? You get to light the way you want to go. And you get to look in all sorts of different directions. And we get to understand what really does light do. You know, we were talking with Lenny earlier about, you know, some of our very first drawing classes that we all take. And they teach us how to draw. And one of the first things they do is they teach us what light actually does to an object. You know, how does texture come onto an object? What does it happen when you put the sun behind a person? Do they become silhouetted? And these are things I'm teaching my son right now, who's 4. You know, is to look at it. What happens if the light's on the front of it? How much brighter something gets, and how the contrast and saturation pops. You know, and we started Aurora in 2010 in the Heritage Village here in Dallas, you know, where it has lots of dark places and these unexpected locations where you wouldn't expect artwork or lighting to be used in an alternative way. You would think tradition, heritage, history, you know, there's this dichotomy of an approach there. And I think that's something that really is beautiful of what light can do. And Lenny, where she's talking about the everyday of like how influential it is, Aurora gets to focus a little more on the experimental and the experiential, you know, of what gets to happen. And right now, technology, as we're sitting on a Zoominar, you know, is changing the world more rapidly than it ever did before. And it's finally really affecting the arts. And that's where like art, technology, and our community are getting to collide. And by doing these nighttime exhibitions, you get to bring people to places they normally wouldn't go to experience them at night. And I think that's something Aurora has been loving to do and be thinking about what's not expected here. You know, it's like, or maybe if you've been someplace 1,000 times, you know, on your commute or as you come home from work or any of this, how can we change it? How can we transform this kind of situation? We started Aurora in the hopes of really becoming one of Dallas's cornerstone cultural events and really landing an event that could put cultural tourism for our region on the map. You know, there's nothing in our city that brings hundreds of thousands of people here in the arts and culture. So that was the premise behind Aurora in 2010. And it's continued to evolve like all missions do, you know, and now today we're more than ever looking at what is art, technology, and community really becoming, and how are those three fusing together? Because where we've loved that light, video, and sound aspect, you really think about that it's art and technology that has separated Aurora and North Texas and Dallas specifically from the rest of other major events. And so we're broadening our vision and to understand that art and technology and community is a global platform, and that we need to be thinking on a larger scale, where our biennial is still going to be a cornerstone event that we hope brings, you know, the people together and inspires everyone. But we're really thinking about what's the future of art. How do we expand that future? And how do we really make our mark in history as a region that is paying attention to this movement that's happening right now? And how do we cultivate tomorrow's artists? You know, they're not going to look at clay, canvas, you know, and the traditional mediums the way that we did or our parents did. You know, they're going to be looking at a computer as a tool, as a paintbrush, you know, as a way of sculpting something. And so Aurora's just happy to be able to give them that platform and be able to show that this is evolving and this is changing. There is a new history of art happening right now, and it involves what technology is doing to the arts. We're, you know, experimenting like everybody is right now. You know, this is a crazy year, and you know, Aurora's luckily, you know, 10 years old. You know, so we're still kind of like a teenager. We've done great things all together, but we've made a lot of mistakes. You know, we've learned a lot of things as we go, but we were still young enough to be able to, you know, flex a lot when 2020 hit us this year. This was our 10-year anniversary. We were supposed to have one of our largest shows, expecting 70,000 people over 64 acres of Dallas for a week. You know, we had some grand visions for this 10-year. And like everybody, you have to re-envision that. And we started thinking about that future and knowing that if this is really a global platform and that it speaks to everywhere, we need to be evolving into an organization that does just programming around the clock and not just a biannual that brings everybody together. So we've been working on that platform, and we've been working on expanding to other cities. We've been working on bringing quarterly program, bringing installations constantly. We have one in West End Park, West End Square Park, opening up March 26th by a Montreal artist named Daniel Iriglai, that called Antibodies. You know, and you can go to our website. It's got an online version where you can experiment with it, and then it'll have a live version with it in the park when it opens as well. So we're learning, and it was completely made in the time of COVID. It was made to be this immersive yet distant installation, and that's how artists are learning to think right now. Is if they can't come to us, how do we go to them? So that was a new one for us that we're looking at how we're doing monthly. But the other one that I want to talk about is Area 3, which was an experiment we did when we really saw that the biennial was not going to happen in a large scale event this year, but more of a dissected, prolonged program. And so, you know, in those unexpected spaces and lighting, like you were saying, we moved into a parking garage this year for an immersive experience where people could drive through. And I had this great conversation, you know, with the parking garage, and I knew it was the perfect place for us to use for an exhibition. When I asked the owner, I said, how do I operate the lighting grid? You know, how do I turn lights on and off? And you know, I knew it was a perfect location. He looks at me, he goes, you go up to the light bulb and you unscrew it. And I was like, that's the perfect answer I want to hear, you know? And so that's how we turned off 100,000 square feet of lighting in a garage, is we literally walked up to the light bulbs and unscrewed them. But then we were able to completely do an immersive piece. So now what I want to do is kind of show a video of that, and I'll let Randall key that up to kind of give you that experience itself. We've hit this one time before about audio. Randall, are you able to hear it? Can everybody else out there hear it?
I don't think so.
No audio. Yeah. We didn't test the audio. We tested the video, didn't we? I remember how you have to stream this through Zoom. Bryan, do you know how to key that in?
Should be there in the audio settings, right next to that microphone, Randall.
Yep. Can you hear it now?
Sir, good job, Randall. Under pressure.
When we have to continue to explore the unknown, where what brought us to today will not get us to the same place tomorrow. You have to find the way forward. These times have been uncertain, but we never stopped looking for a way to connect with our community. Dealing with both isolation and separation from each other during these unprecedented times, we have found a new way forward. With Area 3, Aurora brought our community a way to safely immerse themselves in art and culture. Area 3 was a space for 16 artists to create 11 large-scale installations that transformed over 100,000 square feet of a historic 13th floor garage.
Aurora is honored to continue to explore and experiment with the artists of Area 3 and to continue our mission to expand the future of art.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
Kudos to
sir.
you.
Since we got the downloadable link yesterday for that, I was like, I hope we get this in time for this presentation today. Paperlight Films, I have to give a shout out to those guys. They've just been doing all of our documentation since 2013, and they did just a hands down beautiful job on capturing that there. So that's kind of just, you know, a rundown of my journey in this, like Lenny's, of what we've done and where we're going. I'd love to kick it back to you, Bryan. I know you've got questions and kind of just have more of a dialogue of how we're moving forward all together.
For sure. Definitely want to keep things light and exchange back and forth throughout the rest of the day. And we've got some questions already coming in. So at 24-hour Dallas, we talk about making sure that the nighttime is for everyone. How does lighting help, and what other dynamics should we be looking for as nighttime workers, planners, or even just patrons and pedestrians as we want more nighttime places? Because you know when you're in a place and you know when you're not in one. So what more can we be doing, and how does lighting really help with that? Lenny, you want to go first?
Boil that down a little bit.
Sure. How does, what do you see? I've heard you say lighting is the glue that brings the night together. No?
Okay, I got you.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, in this new idea, this new field of nighttime design, night is a place, or placemaking after dark, lighting takes the lead in that. In other words, to connect places, to find places, to motivate people to come out after dark. From personal experience here in New York, I don't get out of my workplace, which is my home that you see, until 7. I really don't. There's just so much to do. I get out at 7, and there is the night, and I'm looking for those DIY, streeteries, restaurants with sparkle lights and the festoons, and those become kind of cornerstones in a sense, places to go, destinations. I find myself turning down that street because of the sparkle lights, turning down that street. And then sort of there's an alley, it's not very well lit, but let me check it out. It's got really interesting shadows. So I think that light is a guidance. It helps us find our way. And then with that, though, let us not forget, we need to add in the shape of our streets, the kinds of tenants in our buildings, the trees, the street trees, the parks, more public spaces, amenities, places to sit, as I said earlier. I like to be the proponent for lighting plus these other amenities, including policy, including, governance, including, the social activities. So For me, lighting is only one tool to create better nights.
What other tools should policymakers be thinking about, whether it's design standards for buildings or architects?
Okay, community engagement, 150%. That's the other part, which is, what do we want? What don't we like? What isn't working? Where was she accosted? Where did that person get hit by a car? You know, those are the hot spots. Those actually are easy, I have to say. So identifying the hot spots, that's number one. But then with our night walk that we do, or night seeing, it's, well, just like Joshua said earlier, it's like, light is so hard to draw. Guess what? Light is also hard to photograph. So at least we all have language. And to elevate our language, to develop a vocabulary of light, will allow us, when we're bringing citizens in, when we're bringing communities in, to speak of those effects, those atmospheres, what we'd like to see, what the future could be. But if we don't have the vocabulary, you know what you're going to hear? More light. Most neighborhoods will say more light. If you're super highly educated and you've been in our lighting world, you're going to say less light. But neither of those are an answer, you know. So community engagement needs to be combined with a lighting strategy.
Yeah, Lenny, I love what you were saying there about the kind of the design, and it made me think about every film, every photograph, every play, every theater we've ever been to. There is so much behind the lighting that people don't even understand or even take notice that has happened before they turn on one light or raise the curtain. You know, those all things are made possible by those lightings. Those moods are created by how much the lighting designers and producer directors are thinking about the lens, the angle, all of this kind of things. And then you take it into a public atmosphere, and it's a very like down the line thing that is thought about after they built the building, they faced it the direction. You know, it's one of those things that from an artistic standpoint or a film standpoint, you know, it's one of the first things we start laying out and thinking about. What's the mood and the color we want to portray in our narrative, in our story, you know, and lots of times in everyday life, it's one of the last things we think about. And then we're like, why does it not feel like this? And you're like, well, because it wasn't the first thing we thought about, it was the last thing.
If I could pile onto that for a second, one of my really passionate things to talk about, I'll take 1 second to talk about it, is, you know, the future is smart lighting. I didn't put that in my slideshow. I just kept it very, very slim. But electronic, integrated, connected lighting is the future. And a lot of people are afraid of smart cities and smart lighting, and they think about police and surveillance and a lot of the negative effects that we can get around. Focus into what Joshua just said, which is the lobby lights go down. I better get my seat. The auditorium lights go down. It's going to start. The curtain opens. Oh my God, what's happening next? Boom, the lights come on. And then they transform all through the show, right? And then they fade out. I believe that those kinds of light scenarios are the secret to our transformed neighborhoods after dark. But we have to do that and choreograph that with our community and our citizens through pilots, because smart lighting and software, completely malleable, changeable, tweakable. So I'm hoping someday in the places that where we should, entertainment districts, CBDs, you know, places we want people to walk and we want people to visit, that we can transform those atmospheres through time and light for our everyday streets.
Well, it seems like there have been some comments in the chat about, you know, even just the color of lighting and the way light reflects off of even skin color can be different, and that there are ways that light has in some ways perpetuated racial inequities. Do y'all see that come into play in how we make, more safe and inclusive, where that racial equity factor and lighting decisions are taken into account?
I have a couple things. Joshua, do you want to go or should I?
I think that's your neck of the woods. Absolutely. Absolutely
Okay.
on that one.
There's a couple of really interesting things happening. One, back to the sort of smart lighting and also sustainability, conversion to LED. I'm not sure how far Dallas has gotten on this, but conversion to LED lighting means that number one, you save energy. Boom, done, saved energy. Number two, you save money. Well, less maintenance, longer life. But where do you start your lighting conversion? I did speak to a transportation engineer in Seattle, for example, and they really mapped out where they were starting with the conversions. They actually started in the neighborhoods that were the most neglected, and that is something new. So that's very mechanistic. That's a little, the distribution of change. Actually, it's super important. So that's something you can do to count on the transformations in the places that need it the most. The other thing is, what is welcoming? I like to use the word welcome rather than safety so much, but safety is like number one, and we believe that let's have some well-lit intersections. Let's keep those bike lanes lit. Let's have some lighting on the sidewalks. Let's make sure our public spaces are illuminated so people feel safe. But actually, do we feel welcome? Who is welcome? What are we doing? Now, it's not just the lighting, I have to say. There's a lot of history about holding a lantern so that people see your face. And there's a lot of, history, racial history around that, but I'm not going to get into that. And there were also the lantern busters who are against social control in Paris at the beginning of street lighting. But actually, I'm going to change the subject really quick. You'll get some links later on, and I want you all to join our Light and Night book list. It's the best resource I can give you, which is we have an expansive book list available on Library Thing that you can read up on a lot of these issues that I'm talking about right now.
Thank you. We'll be sure to post those in our event recap. Josh, any other thoughts?
I think it's interesting that this is one in like the conversation of equity that is paying attention to, even in the arts. I can't remember which magazine it was, so I don't want to throw it out there, but it was like one of the first African-American photographers of an African-American subject was published on the cover of a very well-known magazine, and it's like, even understanding how that light reacts to different skin tones is a very important conversation. It's like you have to be able to see it in a certain light from the person who's being examined, looked at, or photographed, for sure. So I think it's a conversation that is just like most long overdue. How do we really inundate ourselves with this lighting every day? It's like if we were all forced to live with the same like fluorescent lighting, or overhead lighting, it would be a way that we could all experience that effect of like what is bad. But I think since there's not a universal, and I think, is there any policy on lighting for like new construction and building and things of this nature? Because I know there's like commercial districts, retail districts, and things of this nature, right? And I think there's ways of what building materials people are using or can or cannot use in certain neighborhoods. But are you seeing policy being written for, how many lights can they be used? Because I think light pollution is something we're not talking about a whole lot right here. But, it's like anybody who's been to Marfa or the McDonald Observatory, they'll teach you about light pollution and about, parking lots that are just leaving their lights on all night long. Why? And these things of like, what is the other aspect of light, doing it in a harmful aspect is something to think about as well.
Well, interestingly, light pollution, which I prefer to call light obtrusion, that is the scientific name, which basically means light is obtruding, it's trespassing in places where we don't need it to. So light obtrusion is an envelope name, and then we have light trespass itself, which is that street light if you live in a city that goes into your bedroom, or the neighbor's light that goes on when the cat goes by and bothers you, or glare, which is basically the opposite of sparkle, what I have back there, which is like looking directly into a light. If it hurts your eyes, it's glare. If you like it, it's glitter, you know. And then sky glow. Sky glow is probably what you were talking about. Sky glow is when the light goes up into the sky and it's reflected on any particles of the sky, and it obtrudes on the stars in the starry night. So these are technical things that we can fix. I know people are very emotional about it, but we really need to find the optical solutions, the best practice lighting, and balance the social needs on the ground. You know, we're talking about equity. I had this example once where, you know, some kids in LA did car washes, fundraising. They finally got their floodlights for the recreational area for, like, let's say softball. And they're the worst floodlights. Boom, everywhere, horrible optics, cheap, right? But I say, they must have their lights. I say, in this case, kids earning their lights and playing after dark is more important than the optical characteristics of those floodlights. Let's earn more money next time to have better floodlights. But, you know, there is a real tension between nature and social needs. And the thing is that we can solve both. You know, if there are migratory birds on this, over this park or through the city, turn off the lights during migration. You know, there are many controversies about this. I'm sure I've already got some chats going at this point, but I want people, I need to stand on the ground for the social justice and the social relationships and better lives, especially as we need to experience the outdoors more. We need to walk more. We need to have more sociability. So I'm kind of on that one. And then I say, give me a park and we'll do a nocturnal conservation area. You know, let's reduce brightness where it should be reduced. I think that's enough on that one, probably.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good thing about temporary things. That's the beauty about this. And I think that's so underutilized. I've seen so many buildings that we've done programming on that I'm like, how can I turn this light off? And they're like, you can't. I'm like, okay, like literally you have to go find the breaker or find out how it's wired. But the on and off of, you know, architectural and exterior lighting, you know, of that kind of concept, I think it needs to be more inundated. And I think with LED lighting, that has that capability of thinking, when should this go on? When should this go off? What color temperature should it be during the spring versus the fall? You know, I think these are all conversations and discussions that are starting to evolve right now.
Actually, that's the other thing, if I just pop it in, is control. Lighting control, electronic control is the other tool aside from optics to, you know, reduce power usage, turn lights on in a more automatic way, that sort of thing. So lighting control is also, if we're getting technical here, you know.
Well, as the city of Dallas is developing its Dallas downtown parks, and it's opening the Discovery District, which is a mini Times Square. And, you know, Lenny, you're the official lighting designer of the Times Square. You know, it's an important conversation to be thinking about having. It's, you know, they're all going to be so different, and, you know, how do you absolutely like balance those? So it's really timely for Dallas. Are there any cities like New York or, you know, pockets and around the world that you think are doing a good job of this, that have kind of figured out how to balance all these different needs well with nature, like you're talking about, and beyond?
Well, actually, I'd like to bounce it back to Joshua, because we're kind of leaving the art stuff out. And I'd like to say, hey, Joshua, you guys are such great curators and have created such good programs. Are there cities that you admire that are doing great urban art installations, light installations, light festivals? Would love to, if you don't mind, Brian, just hear
No, go ahead.
what
No.
Josh has to say.
I appreciate that very much, Lenny. Yeah, because we can get technical really quickly. Montreal has been a city that just is leading the way on, first festivals in Canada. There's festival season, there's construction season, and they're out at the same time. But Montreal is leading the way on really what technology and the arts are doing. There's so much government support from Canada in Montreal and city support that it really blew my mind. And I went up there 2 years ago to a festival called Electra. And it was just amazing at how hard they've been working and how long they had been working at this, for sure. And I think, people are really understanding that technology allows these events and these more temporary experiences to happen and to kind of come to life. And I think that's a great thing that technology does, is it gives this ability to do these large scale transformations of a space, with large projections, or taking a dark alley and just showing what it can be like with art included into it, or a lighting scenario that's not the way it is today. So Montreal is the one that I definitely look to, by all means, but then it's kind of really happening everywhere. Currents in Santa Fe, New Mexico is really kind of, on the edge event that's been through there really nicely. And for Santa Fe and New Mexico, it's great to kind of see what they've been doing. I think a lot of the biennials and triennials right now are coming together to figure out how can we collaborate a lot more. And I think that's fantastic. And what we're able to see is like you said, cities, how do they collaborate together? It's like we're all taking a lot of the same costs and infrastructures and, burdens. How can we solve them together? And I think the arts are going to be a giant one in recovery from the pandemic. I think there is a huge emotional gap that is going to be unfilled and unaddressed. And then people will then again look to the arts to help fulfill that, and look to the artists to help bring that to it. And I think taking the arts to the public is a giant step that was already in motion before 2020, and I think it will be a giant step after 2020 as well, because people aren't going to just rush outside of their house. And I don't care that the vaccine is 100% with everybody. People are going to be timid, and so I think the arts need to figure out and continue thinking about how do we go to the public and how do we go to people.
Awesome. Well, I think we have some more time for audience Q&A, and then we'll kind of wrap up with some action steps and what you'd like to inspire and leave people with. We got one question: if there's been any creative work for lighting in rural communities or small towns.
I think that's kind of the on the forefront right now. Aurora's been very fortunate to be approached by several other smaller cities that have a little better understanding of financial budgets and are in a little more secure situations, and are now reaching out to cultural organizations and asking if we if we could consider coming to other towns and programming. So I think rural is definitely the way to look at it. I think also educational programs with younger schools as well, is teaching kids that this technology in our phone, it's just not a tool for communication and email and games, but it is a way for the arts to thrive, is another big thing of getting into the schools and the rural towns is kind of the next thing for sure.
Glad to hear that. What are you seeing on the forefront, Lenny, in terms of sustainability and urban design? You showed us some master plans. Anything else that you'd like to point out?
I like to think that we bake in sustainability, that we use the highest principles that we possibly can when we're doing lighting design. And again, that also includes people. So sustainable communities has to do with people and connections, as well as reduced energy use, you know, reuse of light fixtures if you can do it. It's not always that possible, although there are one-to-one replacements for smart lighting. I think that where sustainability comes in is really more, if I could say, around the activities and the facilitation that lighting provides. So in other words, if you're extending walkability or even, you know, dancing after dark. I mean, I work in Colombia sometimes, and in Bogota, there's certain neighborhoods where you go dance outdoors on the street, and you go to the one that you like the best. I think joy is very sustainable, and we must have it, you know. And so, and then of course, maintenance and working with people who are the operators to make sure that light fixtures can be maintained. Here's a really silly pet peeve, but you know, we all love an uplight in the pavement because it's like really sexy and you have little stepping stones of light. But you know what? In highly trafficked public areas, they're just going to break. You know, so as much as we really love the idea, I always say, you know, I'm sorry to my clients, you know, it's just not going to last. And if it's not installed absolutely level, you know, it may cause condensation, you know. So I think part of sustainability is doing a lighting design that's going to last. I think that's what I'm saying.
Makes sense. So for any of our average citizens like me who have interest in this topic, who want to push public art forward in their city, how can we be better advocates for better designs and better public art?
That's a great question. And it's one that I love, of just like experiment with creating your own art out there, or finding an artist and what can you do to help bring their artwork to life. You know, talk with and find out who with your city is in charge of, you know, the arts. You know, the Office of Art and Culture here is, you know, a great place to start. But like most arts, it's about collaboration. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about any project in Aurora itself, is it's a giant collaboration with civic, private, individuals, volunteers, staff, and even corporate, you know. So it's a way of getting into a community by just reaching out and asking that very question of going, hey, we've loved what you're doing, or I love what you're doing. Is there, always start with a compliment. Everybody loves a compliment if you need to get into something. As by the way, I learned that a long time ago. And then ask, hey, how can I help? And that's the very first place to start. You know, and then, you know, if you know from there, just start something yourself. I think that's the most important thing, is right. It's like there's no you know, win or fail. There's just make, is something that I've always loved about, you know, Sister Creta Kent and John Cage and their quotes. It's like, just make something, see where it leads.
Great. Any parting words? And Josh, one more time, for government officials, urban planners, anybody else, artists in the audience that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of build on what Joshua was just saying, which is collaboration is key, especially in these sort of outlying areas. You know, we're not talking about benches, we're not talking about street lights or street signals, which I call the jewels of the night because it's so fabulous. You know, but they're basic, right? We're talking about something that people think is the frosting. And because they do, not that we do, because we're saying light guides us at night, that's pretty important. We need to break down the silos between governmental departments to work together, the planners and the transportation authority, to gather funding in different ways, whether it's associations or corporate, to have cities collaborate. I work with Lighting Urban Communities International, Lucy Association. It's 70 cities that collaborate in research and network about lighting in cities. And they teach each other and they share and they test and they research. So this kind of collaboration that comes at the very smallest level of collaborating with your team on an art project, let's say, on the larger scale of cities collaborating is very important. Get stuff done.
Keep an eye out for those opportunities. Thank you.
No, I think this has been a great conversation. I just want to thank Randall and you, Bryan, for bringing this unique conversation. I think it was very wise of y'all to be thinking of this as your 24 hours, thinking of that. And one of the very first things to think about is that light, that experience, and how's that going? So I appreciate the time today.
And I want to say hello to everybody who's out there who I don't see, but I'm so excited that Randall gave me this opportunity to speak on the thing I feel is the most important in my life and in the life of our cities. And Bryan, you've been a great moderator. I really enjoyed your point of view. Joshua, learning about Aurora, it's major. Thank you.
Well, before we go, I want to show three things that are coming up that 24-Hour Dallas has on the books. If you are a member of our organization, we're bringing in the night mayor of New York City. She's going to be our guest for a members meeting on March 31st. Ariel Palitz is the first staffer in the United States, really, who's designated to attend to the issues of the night and in no place other than New York City. And Ariel's been a good friend of ours as we've kind of been getting our feet under ourselves here. We're not even a year old yet. She's been there for 2 years. And we would invite you to join 24-Hour Dallas so you can have this discussion. It will be a meeting, not a webinar. And please consider that. You're thinking about, as Josh said, how can I get started? Well, here's an idea. Get started with us. Help make it happen with 24-Hour Dallas. We have a team just anxious to make something happen that will suit your public art passion. Also, next month, we're bringing in 2 other experts on the nighttime economy. Andreina Saillas is from Venezuela originally and now here in the States via Harvard. She is one of the leaders in the nighttime economy studies, as is Alistair Turnham, a friend of Lenny's. Ali actually coined the term nighttime economy. The two of them are going to speak to how cities can boost their tax base with activities at night. And I'm very pleased that our own City of Dallas Office of Economic Development is going to be the co-sponsor of that program. And finally, then in May, let's eat. Ron Ruggles, who's senior editor of Nation's Restaurant News, and then a national restaurant consultant, Matthew Mabel, will be joined by one of our board members. And we're going to talk about now that they're coming back, what's that mean? What are the trends? How are things changed for permanent? What are restaurants and bars going to need to do to be prepared for this new influx in the new normal? So those are 3 programs we have coming up. 24-Hour Dallas is an all-volunteer nonprofit organization. We're here because we believe Dallas at night can be even more positive, more dynamic, culturally respectful, and economically rewarding, especially as we emerge from the coronavirus pandemic. We also believe, as Bryan said, that the nighttime is for everyone. We could use your participation. Go to 24hourdallas.org, join us, sign up for our newsletter, and activities will come to your email box. Bryan, thank you so much for moderating. Joshua and Lenny, thank you. It's been invigorating to hear us talk about the night and light and terrific arts festivals and how buildings are presented to us and how the night and light makes us safer, more dynamic, and healthier even for those of us who like to run in the dark. So I thank you for joining us. My name is Randall White. Take great care and enjoy your night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.